Hi, my name is Sammy Canold, and I am talking to Playbill about the documentary film The Show Must Go On.
The 2019-2020 season. Reserve your seats today.
Broadway is going to go dark. The show will not be going on.
All 41 theaters on the Great White Way shut down.
96,000 jobs.
So I was FaceTiming with a group of friends, one of them, Kristen Blodgett, who is has been working on Phantom of the Opera and Cats worldwide for over 30 years. And it was, you know, in the doldrums of the pandemic when everything was quite bad. And she said, I'm going to Korea in a few weeks to work on the South Korean tour of Cats. And at that time, nobody was making theater anywhere. And I was just dumbfounded. And I was like, how is that even possible?
The pandemic has halted performances worldwide, but here in Korea, a touring production of Phantom of the Opera is on stage.
I woke up to a phone call telling me that I was in Cats. I was like, are you sure?
Cats and the Phantom of the Opera could be a good example.
We were going to be one of the few shows in this entire world.
The Phantom of the Opera World Tour, when it was running in spring of 2020, was the only large-scale English language production in the entire world. And so I'd been reading about that and then hearing about Cats from Kristen and then watching Andrew Lloyd Webber, you know, championing the survival of theater on the West End. And I was like, these dots all kind of connect, and it seems like there's a story to be told here. You know, of course, there's a story to be told about all theater makers keeping theater alive in all the so many different ways that they did during the pandemic, but this felt like in documentary film, you really want to pick a specific story and a specific subject that you can use to sort of speak to a larger theme, and this felt like, aha, these three dots connect and allow us to tell you know, a slice of a larger story.
It's really important for us to have live theater alive.
We've been living on a little bit of a knife edge every day.
It was very hard to make a film while the world was shut down. 3 weeks after we decided to make the film, I was on a plane to Korea. And I had to quarantine for 2 weeks in a government facility along with the whole Cats company before we were able to do anything. We were only able to have certain numbers of crew in the room at a given time because we were trying to keep, you know, potential positive cases low at the time. There was no vaccine. We really had to be cautious and make sure that, you know, the show could go on. It was mostly myself and our DP, and we had to keep the crew really small. So I shot a lot, you know, on a little camera that I carried around. And you know, we had members of both the Cats and Phantom companies shooting things on their iPhones. We had folks all over the world shooting things on their iPhones for us. And so it's really a film that is like collaged through the efforts of so many theater makers, and we're very grateful for that. I learned a lot from making the film. And I think most of all, deep admiration for the Korean theater industry. I had been to Korea before, but wasn't familiar with the way that the theater industry worked. The commercial theater industry there is only about 20 years old, and the way that they forged ahead against all odds in this moment is really inspiring, and I think comes from a belief that theater is essential. Not in any way to, you know, comment on theater shutting down everywhere else in the world, because Korea as a country was doing so much better than everywhere else in the world. So it was sort of uniquely possible there. But it was also uniquely possible because of the protocol that were, you know, quickly implemented. And I think that, you know, theater communities around the globe have been learning from Korea's example. And I'm really inspired by that and grateful for it.
That it didn't spread throughout the company was a miracle.
가이드라인처럼 모든 제작사들이 저희가 어떻게 하는지를 좀 계속 지켜보고 있었던 것 같고, 상당히 어떻게 보면 우리 공연계도 그 코로나와 함께 같이 좀 이렇게 배워가는 과정 중이었던 것 같아요. 그래서 모두 이 난관을 같이 헤쳐나가자.
공연장에서 사실 재확산되는 경우는 한 건도 없었고요. 네. 저희가 운영하고 있는 그 42번가 역시 확진자가 다녀갔다라는 이제 그 이야기를 저희가 좀 들었었고, 그 보건소에서 CCTV로 다 그 경로를 추적을 하면서 확진자가 다녀갔지만 마스크를 모두 끼고 있었기 때문에 보건소에서의 지침은 공연을 멈추다든지 이 장소를 셧다운할 필요 없이 다음 날 바로 공연을 진행해도 이상이 없다. 어려운 환경이지만 계속적으로 공연을 할 수 있는 그런 계기가 사실 이런 부분으로 좀 증명이 됐고요.
We were racing to get the film done because we wanted it to come out before theater came back, in large part because we wanted it to be helpful and be part of the conversation and say, you know, here's what Korea did. We can learn from their example and use it to come back ourselves. And, you know, it takes a while to finish a documentary film. So we were racing against the clock and we were like, oh my gosh, we're going to be so irrelevant. Like COVID's going to be way in the rear view mirror. We're not going to be even thinking about it anymore. And here we are, you know, with the Delta variant, and hopefully, you know, all will be on track for Broadway's reopening and the reopening of theater around the country and around the globe. But as we're seeing on the West End and in Australia and, you know, everywhere, theater still has a really big uphill battle. And so I hope that the tenacity of the Korean theater industry that we sort of aim to document in the film is helpful to folks. Not to say that we should charge ahead against all odds, because sometimes that's just not possible. But to say, you know, with the right combination of factors, you know, perhaps we can keep the show running despite, you know, this factor. And I don't own a theater. I'm not a producer. I'm not the one making those calls. It's above my pay grade. But I am so inspired by what I saw, you know, our Korean colleagues doing, and I'm excited to amplify their message. It is so incredibly meaningful to get to premiere the film in the Majestic Theater, home to the Phantom of the Opera. I mean, first of all, it's just such a historic and meaningful site, and also to be back in it as the first thing in over 500 days since, you know, the Broadway shut down on March 12th, 2020, is very meaningful. So we are really grateful, and additionally, we are very grateful that the premiere will be in support of the Actors Fund, and 100% of tickets sold will go towards the fund's vital work to aid entertainment professionals in need, particularly at this very critical time when so many in our industry are in critical need of that support. And we so admire what the fund is doing and are so grateful that we get to celebrate their work and contribute to it a little bit through this event. So buy tickets. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Playbill. And you can get tickets at Telecharge, or specifically tinyurl.com/The Show Must Go On premiere.
The show must go on.
On to the theatre we go.